talk to the crows on the wire. They carry a voice I still know. My hands in the dirt, pulling fire from seeds that the dead helped me sow. The gardens remember what I can't forget. A woman who lived here I've already met.
Oh, that thing is heaven, you know? This is like the true.
I'm sitting here today, I think in Washington, D.C., but we could very well be in Italy, reporting from Ama, the most delicious restaurant on the planet, perhaps.
Thank you.
And I am in awe to be sitting with you again today after falling head over heels in love with you and your food last night.
I appreciate that.
Grazie mille, Bella.
Grazie di essere qui, huh?
Sì, and grazie to our friend Oliver that connected this magic, and we were literally off to the races. So I would love to, we filmed a little bit last night while eating my first dinner. I stayed and ate a second one at the bar. We were here probably for about 5 hours. And
now you're back for breakfast.
And now we came back for breakfast. Just had the best, will you say it in your Italian divinity?
Torta di riso.
Di riso. Best thing ever, zucchini rice,
Yes.
some pastry from...
Little parmigiano, little spelt crust, yeah.
Oh, yes. Okay, so we want to talk food, but we also want to talk you. Please, chef, introduce yourself and share anything you want to about this sacred restaurant that we're in and your experience of arriving here.
Thank you. My name is Johanna Hellrigl, and I'm the chef and owner of Ama. Ama is a mission-driven restaurant. We truly believe that like health and sustainability go hand in hand. And when you really look at things not in silos, but you look at the full ecosystem of what it takes to really run a restaurant that nourishes people and planet, you can create something that really sustains itself and also can be the case study and the modeling for how we can continue to evolve our food system, build systemic change, and really be part of this movement that really needs to happen to create more conscious dining and really take care of people and their health. And I grew up between Liguria and Alto Adige. My dad is from that northern Dolomite region. My mom is from that Portofino, like Ligurian coast of the French to the Italian Riviera. And, I really just wanted to create a restaurant that embodied, the ethos and slow food movement when it comes to how Italian cooking is very from scratch and very nourishing, and really bring that authenticity to Washington, D.C.
Well, thank goodness it's here, and how wild that we came in for People versus Poison, which was yesterday, which even though I've never really been one to follow the political world, and I've only been to Washington a couple of times, I felt very called to come stand up for the power of the people to express their sovereign choice around what to put in their bodies, including glyphosates. My wild experience with the regenerative agriculture movement started about 3.5 years ago, but it was something that I remembered like a waking up in my body. And it came with a lot of tears and a lot of defrosting of the amnesia of how much I'd been masking, and even just the truth around me was very hard to digest. So I would love to hear, what led you to do it here in Washington, because I think you are speaking a universal language that actually can span across all parties.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually kind of interesting because I think if we open, the number one places we get asked to open are LA and Austin and Miami and New York even, we get a lot of requests for people who are looking for restaurants similar to what we're doing. But we happen to be in Washington, D.C., and I don't think it technically was the most easy place to open to do what we're doing. Like, it's a very fit city, right? People exercise here, but in terms of like this health conscious movement, I wouldn't say it's like priority number one for the city. There's a lot of power, there's a lot of politics, there's a lot of dynamics going on. It's also a very tense city right now with just everything that's going on with the current administration, and then how polarizing politics has really been, especially over the last 15 months. And so, being here in Washington, D.C., I went to GW, I studied international affairs, I worked in democracy building, and I basically then decided to change my career back into restaurants since I grew up in restaurants. And I never really left this city, and I kind of built my ascending into leadership roles in the kitchen in this city. And so it only felt naturally fitting to open here. But at the time of opening, did I realize what being 4 blocks from the Capitol would really mean for this restaurant? Absolutely not. And so when I opened my doors and all of a sudden I had so many members of Congress coming, I had so many people who were on the Hill working here, I had people who were flying in for advocacy work, and they were feeling aligned with what our restaurant mission was, and so they would seek to come out here for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I mean, just what has transpired since we opened in June of 2024, which we're coming on 2 years, is truly one of the hardest things I've ever done, and also one of the most magical things that I've ever done. And so, it's a really interesting time where health to me is a human right, food is a human right, and accessibility and affordability are something that I'm very, very passionate about, and creating this systemic change where this can be affordable and accessible for most people. And so when seeking to make Ama, I wanted to make like the neighborhood restaurant. I didn't want it to be, a tasting menu experience, and I didn't want it to be fast casual, because we're asking people to slow down and take a moment for themselves and nourish themselves. And so we've created this kind of hybrid experience of, you can come here for breakfast, you can come here for lunch, you can come for dinner.
Or all three.
Or all three, which I will say has been happening a lot. And I love that, because people feel like, they're getting nourished and they're enjoying something that aligns with their ethos. And to me, that's a really beautiful thing, because you do vote with your dollars, right? And so, spending money with us, right, means that we're able to really also keep shifting the demand for restaurants doing what we're doing, and also showing restaurateurs that even if it's harder work to do it the way that I'm doing, it's worth it because the consumer is responding to it. And therefore, if the demand changes and shifts to this, and the supply chain can shift as well, and at some point, if we're all coalescing and creating buying power together, what happens, right? The prices start to go down. This starts to be something that is more cost effective, because this is the new supply chain, right? Rather than what we're currently dealing with. And it might be naive, but that's my goal, right? Is the more we educate and give awareness of the importance of doing this hard work, and why it pays off and matters, like the more people will start to see and really feel, right, the difference.
Well, I can speak from personal experience, having had a gluten allergy off and on my whole life, really loving pasta, loving carbs, can eat it in Italy, no problem. Yeah. But coming back to America was always like, no, it's a gluten-free situation most of the time, unless it's handmade. But last night, after ordering all the appetizers and then having the best chat with you, we ordered a whole nother array of the pasta that I think may have changed my life forever. Was that, I'm not kidding, is that simple, the most simple perfection I've ever had, that pomodoro. And I don't know what the pasta is. I need to go back and look, or I could ask the chef.
I'll tell you more about it, yeah.
But that, I woke up today with more energy than I have in a very long time. And I woke up yesterday with my tummy in knots. And to wake up and feel that good, and to be that fed, and to walk through the Capitol grounds and imagine truly a DC where food gardens come back, and we have not only glyphosate-free lawns, but really regenerating our community one neighborhood at a time. I mean, your language carried on with me the rest of the night, and through the night. I had the best sleep and woke up feeling so alive, like vibrant and connected to the earth, ecstatic to try the pasta for the second time. And just excited to literally eat anything you are putting down.
And I really appreciate that, because it's like, it seems like such a simple pasta, right? But there's so many parts of it that go into it. And that just kind of, to me, is why, it is something just difficult to translate for everybody, because you don't want to overbear people with like all this education of what we're doing differently. You want people to just, simply enjoy it. But for the people who maybe haven't been eating the way that, you know, you obviously value regenerative farming, organic ingredients, you enjoy simplicity. We've talked about Italy, and, you know, Italy is mostly simplistic
abundance
dishes that really, like, the ingredients speak for themselves, and like the slow cooking nature of it and everything that goes into that hard work. But if you think about it, you know, if people are constantly eating ultra processed food, right? Like if you have a pack of Doritos and you had a little candy and you had a little soda and you had all these things, and then you go try my pomodoro pasta, it might not actually be something that you value all the simplicity of the flavors for, right? And so we are in this really telling time where chemicals are being added, right? The 99% that have been added through the GRAS loophole, so many chemicals are being added to our food to make them as addictive as possible. There is a amazing scientist, food scientist, who's been working on this in Michigan, who's actually showcasing this amazing data to show just literally how addictive this food is being made for people to eat. And that makes it even more difficult for my job, right? Because you have all arrays and walks of life and different people who have different palates coming in. And how do you really make food that everybody resonates with? And so at the same time, you want them to have a beautiful, lovely, lively experience, and you don't want to overburden them with like, here's all the things we're doing, right? Sometimes people just want a pasta and a glass of wine. But that pasta, right, the spaghetti al pomodoro, is a classic that most Italians have. But, you know, what do we have going on there? So we use, I believe that a pasta al pomodoro is better with like a dried pasta. So we use this ancient grain, organic kamut flour spaghetti that is actually like air dried in the Dolomite Mountains using mountain water. And so it already is this pasta that's not only a non-hybridized form of wheat that is an ancient grain, but, you know, the water and the curation and the way that it's air dried is also really thought through. Then from there, we use these amazing Gustarosso tomatoes, which are, it's a cooperative that is DOP certified San Marzano tomatoes. And it's actually like lots of older farmers and people in the community who go and collect in this co-op these beautiful tomatoes and still are doing it like the artisanal ancient way of farming and cultivating them. And they are canned with nothing else but the tomato inside of it, right? And then from here, we work with Lancaster Farm Fresh, which is an organic cooperative that grows mostly all of our vegetables and our meat. And we work hand in hand with them to create our growing cycle for the year, to plan out all the fruits and the vegetables that we want to serve at Ama. And so we use these beautiful onions that are coming from them, and beautiful basil. And like, we then also have another Italian importer who has this special olive oil from Liguria. That's a family-owned olive oil, and it's done with the Tagasque olives, and it's done the right way. And then we're putting in a $30,000 water filtration system to ensure that all of our water that we cook with or drink with or clean with is actually cleaned. Because if you look at the EWG, I'm on the board of the environmental working group, but if you look at the EWG tap water database and you search your zip code, you'll truly understand like what is currently being regulated for not being in our water is clearly not being regulated. And we have very, you know, between microplastics and PFAS, I mean, you name it, like our water is not where it should be. So the water is being filtered. The sea salt, we partnered with Vera Sea Salt, which is one of the only sea salts that's being tested not only for heavy metals, but also for microplastics. And it's beautiful, like mineral-rich salt rather than just like a table salt or something that is just about the sodium. And so all of those little details that I mentioned, and then we're cooking on stainless steel in a fully electric kitchen, like the way that we are making all of that slow cooking come together, in addition to not using any single-use plastic and not using any plastic storage for any of those ingredients, and the way that we're doing it, like all our 6 pans, everything on the line. You know, we even have the wooden cutting boards that are single grain cutting boards to actually like cook on our prep top, all of them just like one piece of wood. And all of that effort, right, is just to make one simple pasta,
Oh my God.
right?
I'm blown, just beyond.
And-
I'm holding my hands down, so I'm not like joining you in the Italian things
No,
my body
but,
wants to do,
you
because
know,
I'm so blown away.
And it, you know, my dad would always add like the knob of butter, and that little baby knob of butter, it's cultured butter that we're making in house. The Parmigiano Reggiano is 24-month, you know, Parmigiano Reggiano that's made the real way. Like, there's no shortcuts, because if I'm gonna do a simple dish, like, it has to be the most beautiful and the best of the ingredients. And that is like where it's hard, right? Because margins are tough in the industry. It's not easy to do what we're doing, but it's not ever crossed my mind to ever take a shortcut, because everything I nourish people with here, I would nourish my son with. Like, I want everyone to really be nourished and feel good and enjoy a pasta again, right? Like,
It's working. I mean, your voice, just like your food, resonates in the cells. Your voice is also a love language back to the food industry, and your belief of what it can be again through watching your parents, through understanding the culture. I mean, I shared with you, Alice Waters is one of my best friends. I used to study cooking and recipe books when I was a little girl, and I wanted to be a chef. That was my dream when I was little. I cooked for my whole family, and I agree, I felt the same way. But there are things that I've learned since the remembrance of the regeneration process that's in all of our bodies, to slow down, to remember that we are one with nature, and to feed human nature in this nourishing way, I really believe is the way to change the world. So I'm amazed at finding such a soul sister that nourishes in this way, but also that I've learned so much from in the last, I don't know, I don't think we've known each other for more than 12 hours on this plane, but it was just so instant in the slowdown, right? It was such an instant remembrance. And so I'm very interested in not only what your next stages are and what's coming next, because I know you're all over the world, and you've done a TED Talk on microplastics too, which I cannot wait to see. I learned a lot from you last night, talking about how even food is stored, and how plastic, if it's stored in the wrong containers, therefore you are then eating plastic again, or you're serving your clients that might. Yeah. So you know so much more than I do on this, and definitely watch the TED Talk.
Yeah, no, and it's so interesting, because I think when we think about largely like plastic, right, it's becoming more and more of a conversation. And I think what I've noticed is that, you know, I care about people and planet, right? But I've always kind of cared about like sustainability. I've cared about like understanding like landfills and where everything is going. And if you think about it, like only 9% of the plastic that's ever been created has been recycled. And so when you have that information, and then you know that there's about 16,000 plastic chemicals like that we are surrounded by, like these are really alarming statistics from a health perspective, but also from a landfill perspective. And so what I started to really recognize is that when you start to have the conversation about health and sustainability going hand in hand, especially when it comes into plastic, more and more people are starting to want to have that conversation. There's a great documentary that just came out called The Plastic Detox, which is really talking about the correlation of our fertility crisis with, of course, what is happening with the increase of plastic usage. And so just seeing that the restaurant industry's primary focus on plastic has been mostly a conversation about plastic takeout containers, but still is largely our single-use plastic, and our to-go containers are still largely single-use plastics, including, very, I would call dangerous ones when they are used with heat. The conversation has been so focused on these kind of front of the house things that are takeaways for the consumer. But when you actually step behind the kitchen pass and you start to realize how much of a toxic convenience has been created by plastic for plastic storage, or the gloves, or the plastic wrap, or the polycarbonate blenders that we use, or sous vide, and the huge movement to vacuum seal and cook our food in plastic hot water baths, right? We have literally missed the mark on like what it is to truly take care of people and planet. And this is the irony of a time where the sustainability conversation of what a restaurant is kind of missing the conversation of like, you can make zero waste initiatives, but if you're not thinking through heat, fat, acid, and time being the perfect storm of plastic and chemical migration, then we are missing the mark on true sustenance and sustainability. And so that is like my big focus. I've been working on solutions for not only the educational part of it, but also physical solutions, right? Because there's not a lot of options that currently exist to help people eradicate the deli containers, the Cambros, and all the things that truly are what chefs are using on a day-to-day basis. And so, you know, I'm very void driven. When I see that there's a void, that's kind of what I create from. Like, it's not from ego, it's truly from what's missing, what do people need? And that's the same way we approached the restaurant, right? Like, it wasn't like I wanted people to experience Italy, but I was like, what's actually missing in the neighborhood, you know? And that's why we have this window where you can come get a coffee. We have gelato. We just like started to find ways to like think through the little things that people would need. And that's how we curated the program here. And so,
tell me about the gelato that I missed.
Okay.
So, I mean, I saw the window and the dessert. You said to save room for dessert.
Yeah,
but since we had 3 dinners last night,
so today you have to have gelato.
All desserts, yeah.
Yeah, so we make really beautiful, like the authentic, original way of making gelato. We have this Catabriga FS6 machine that actually like pulls up and down, and that's how the gelato is made. It's not like the Carpigiani that goes out. And so it's really interesting because the aeration technique gets the most beautiful consistency, but we don't use any stabilizers. We use no refined sugar in-house. So everything is sweetened with unrefined sucanat or other forms, like we use raw honey, we use apple to sweeten. So we have gelato, we have sorbetto, that's seasonal flavors, and we have like a lot of fun with it. Yeah.
And cake, the chocolate cakes in the window. I did see a torta.
Yeah, but like we were saying, like
the sugars are great.
You want to have like being healthy. This is the struggle I have, especially as women, right? I feel like we are constantly in this like, how do I put this? We struggle with like nourishing ourselves. Like, and most of the time we're actually truly malnourished and undernourished in the way that we approach food, right? You feeling great today is because your body was well fed and it needed that sustenance. When we go from like, oh, I'm going to have girl dinner and I'm just going to have like a martini and a French fry. Damn, eat the French fries because they're delicious, and have the martini if you want to have the martini. But like, to then the next day be like, oh, I indulged, so now I'm going to either fast, or I'm going to have like a green juice, or I'm just going to like feel shame about my decisions from the night prior and go in this like head loop. Like, that makes me so sad, and I've been fully victim of it as well.
100%.
Right? Like,
I mean, who hasn't had eating shame issues?
And it's so targeted to women, and it's so upsetting because it's almost like you feel like because you had the pasta, you then have to like do something about it the next day, right? Or like,
not me. I just want to have the dessert today. But I have
sat
with myself 100%.
But that's like the thing
over.
that I struggled with when I went on my
100%.
health journey, right? Because I really wanted to approach food as medicine. When you go on health journeys, there's usually an elimination phase, right? You're avoiding dairy, you're avoiding gluten, you're avoiding refined sugar. Those are all things that might need to be a necessary thing for you to do to heal if your body is inflamed or you have a chronic disease or something that's going on.
Absolutely.
So one, creating a restaurant that's inclusive rather than exclusive when it comes to dietary restrictions. If you're on a low FODMAP diet, if you need to be on a restrictive diet for a time being, we are here for you to make that happen. But to know that then when you are able to come back to all food, right, if you can, right, there's some stuff that maybe you just have to avoid, to know that you can have the tiramisu, have the gelato, have the pasta, and just enjoy it for what it truly is, and also be nourished from it and see that food is medicine and it's not just one box or category of it. Like, That truly to me is so important. And even in January, which is largely the time where everybody goes on a diet and restricts themselves, we chose to partner with Dr. William Li, who wrote the book, Eat to Beat Disease, Eat to Beat Your Diet. And his whole philosophy, right, with food as medicine is just like to really understand the ingredients and how they actually can be medicine. And so instead of creating a restrictive menu, we took our same menu, maybe with a couple of specials and unique seasonal ingredients. And what did we do? We wrote health descriptions for each of those dishes. So you could understand on a cellular level that this focaccia still had some type of health benefit, even if it's focaccia, right? And so those are like the things that are so important to me, because I even struggled on my health journey of being like, oh, now that I went through this and I, went on that elimination diet and I've been healthy, like, what am I gonna do? Create the like paleo Italian restaurant? Like, no, like eat the pasta like my grandma did, eat things the way that you do when you're in Italy, and just know that if it's made with quality ingredients, it's done with slow cooking, like you'll really be nourished from it. And that has been such a big part of like the philosophy here.
And you'll even feel amazing after someone like me who can't really eat pasta, or even this morning being like, cappuccino, I can have it here because you have amazing milk.
Yeah.
I trust the ingredients, I trust the chef. And I think that's also part of it, is getting back to our connection with the farmers, with the chefs, with the angels that are preparing everything for us to be nourished.
Yeah.
Instead
it's
of
asking the right questions, right? Like, what are your growing practices? Can I come visit the farm?
Yes, please.
How is the milk, is it grass-fed? Is it, low vat temp pasteurized? Is it certified organic? How are they happy cows, right? Like, and if you're vegan, you're vegan. If you're not, you're not. There's something for everyone here. And that's what I was just going back to, of like, how do you just make this a place that can meet you where you're at and not feel like I have to be like, this is what we can do or this is what we can't do. Because I just feel like we need to be as inclusive as possible, and then also try, our pricing, even if everything is certified organic and we're working really hard to like create the best of the best, like our pricing in this city is price comparative to everybody.
Right? A $20-something best pasta of your life.
But like, that's kind of the goal here, is to make people realize that while I might take a slight hit on my margins, I have tried to find a way to make this really for everyone, because it's important for me to just be this like example and case study that it can be done. And it doesn't have to just be like a 20-seat little baby restaurant. Like, we're a 4,000 square foot restaurant. We feed hundreds of people, and we're able to do it with all of these different vendors. Like, we don't use Cisco, we don't use US Food, we don't have those broadliners, and we're still able to get it done.
There was this moment that you were just speaking, and it really brought up something that ripped my heart wide open. So when I was, it was funny that you said you opened here about 4 years ago.
2 years
ago. 2 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
Something? Okay,
Yeah.
2 years ago.
But it took me 8 years to build the restaurant. So
Okay,
yeah.
so you were in it. And about 4 years ago, I had my wake up call with the tree. And then I went and spent a lot of time in nature with like devices off, walking barefoot, listening to the land, being with the earth. And there's this place called San Ynez Valley that's very close to Santa Barbara. And I was reading there. I hardly, read the paper, but I truly like stumbled upon this feeding today sort of like pamphlet moment. And it was at a coffee shop with a dog on it. And my this is a little, down another rabbit hole, but my mother, when I was 12 years old, had a vision that we had to go to North Carolina. We followed a dog, a corgi, and fell in love with this land in North Carolina. And I made every meal on the farm. I took care of all the animals. I moved from like a very sort of socialite childhood life to the land. And my body was remembering that. And I read this thing that it was called, Feeding the Valley. And it was like $10 for a meal, like what you would they have a Michelin star called Belle's there, and Barlacote. And this incredible couple founded it so that during COVID, you could come and be fed for $10, but buy like an epic meal. And my thought was almost like a Tom situation, like a 1-for-1. I come here and buy a meal at Amma, it was delicious, but I double my bill to buy a stranger a meal. Or, can we find a way to make this accessible for so many others? And I know we can. I think a lot of it is getting together to figure out how. But this accessibility piece is just as essential, if not the highest priority for me right now in all of my waking up. So
it's an interesting time, right? Because we need the grassroots effort and we need the private sector to be involved. But at the same time, from the top down, we need policy, we need investments, right? We need regulation. And it's really a difficult time where right now there's a lot of defunding and deregulating instead of putting in the funding and investing and then also regulating what needs to get regulated. So we do create a safer environment for people, that they don't have to go look at a database to see what's in their water, right? Like they could just trust the system is taking care of them. And that's the hard part of the top down to the bottom up. And I really struggle with that because a lot is asked from small businesses and the private sector to do good for their communities and nonprofits, obviously. And it's really time for policy and systems to really catch up of doing the right thing to make sure it trickles down, right? There's downstream accountability, but there's also upstream accountability that really needs to happen, right? Even on the plastic conversation, right? It's like, we can put in this regulation, we can put a little bit of funding for research, but what about the upstream accountability for virgin plastics and petrochemicals? Like, stop it at the source. And so for me, a lot of the work that I'm passionate about is working with, for example, in DC, there's DC Greens that's doing produce prescriptions. And then there's also other organizations doing medically tailored meals. And then there's Building Bridges, which is trying to basically create more healthy, accessible, affordable food for residents in Ward 8. And they have the Arc Farm that's doing produce pickups, fresh produce pickups from 12 to 2 on Fridays for anybody to come get fresh organic produce, right? And DC Greens, with these produce prescriptions, they also have the Well at Oxen Run, which is a farm, and you can literally go and pick up to 2 pounds of fresh produce. So like all of these amazing organizations that I love and I work with and I'm so happy to advocate and for support, are doing the work, but there needs to be resources, there needs to be funds. And so, there's brilliant ideas, like you said, with like the one-to-one or how you can buy a meal for others. But I'm also passionate of not just stopping on the grassroots level. I'm very passionate about going on the hill 3 blocks away.
Which is where you're about to go.
And I'm going today.
Yes, and I'll meet you later. Yes. So after I have my 6 breakfast. But I haven't tried everything yet.
It's because they're supposed to work for the constituents. And right now, there is so much that is not being done to think about the constituents that got people elected. And there's also amazing, brilliant people who do really care. But if they're outnumbered by the people who don't, it becomes very difficult to get anything done. And so with me being on the board of the Environmental Working Group, obviously we care a lot about environmental toxins. We care a lot about just the work with regards to pesticides. We care a lot about, this conversation of preemption, right? Where currently on the state level, you have states that are now going out of their way to create certain laws and different legislation is being passed to create almost like the case study that could incubate of what could be done on the federal level, right? Because they're taking initiative for their schools, their food, their programming. And we are now in a place where certain legislators are trying to put forward legislation that would take away all of these states' rights to be able to create this preemption. This is for pesticide as well as for food chemicals and closing the grass loophole. And the difficulty is that until the federal government is well-funded and well-regulated, if the states are able to do their thing and almost build the case study of what can be done, right? Then let them do that. and then be the example to get more and more states to buy in until we can actually really get more federal support, right? But if you're trying to take that away without putting in the investment and actually putting in the resources to regulate, it's going to set us back tremendously. And so these are these difficult conversations where you might hear that a member, loves my restaurant or loves eating organic or loves to hear about food as medicine. But what are you actually doing to make sure that more people can get that education, that access?
What can they do? What would you say? Okay, step up to the plate.
I would say step up to the plate, for example, with the Make America Healthy Again movement, right? Yes. You're talking about something that is associated with the Republican administration of Trump, and whether or not it's recognized, because they like to sometimes say that they are not part of one side or another. The reality is that the Maha name is associated with the Trump administration, right? And so you might have people who have been registered Democrats that have joined this movement, but the reality is that this conversation largely of Maha needs to be recognized that not everyone who's actually legislating or in the administration are doing things on the Republican side that correlate with making America healthy. And so this example of, right, the farm bill, right, that went in the House Ag Committee, Shelley Pingree, a Democrat, Jim McGovern, a Democrat, gave very compelling speeches to say, hey, we're Democrats, we might not agree on everything, but what we can agree on is it's not okay to keep people getting sick and getting cancer and all of these different things from pesticides, and we need to do something about it. 100%. So a legislation was introduced that was very much Maha, right? If you're talking about the word Make America Healthy Again. And what's really interesting is every single Republican voted against that amendment and one Democrat.
Wait, every single Republican voted against
her amendment to take away what the legislation was with regards to pesticide preemption. And then also we've had these great conversations about the liability shields and everything else that's going on, right? And so we're in this really difficult moment where there's a movement, people care on both sides. There's polling that's literally showing that Americans are really concerned about what's in their food, what's in their water, what's in their air. And there isn't a lot of movement on big ag and big food to really hold them truly accountable, to really invest funds necessary to transform these food systems, and then also to really regulate it, right? The grass loophole is another example. 99% of the chemicals that are being introduced into our food system are not regulated, and they're going through this loophole. And we're at a point where a Republican member from Florida just introduced the Fresh Act, and that literally would take away all state rights to do all of the preemption that has just been passed, like, for example, in New York. And so we're in this really difficult moment that we're like, what are we doing here? Because these are basic foundational things that should not be a partisan issue.
Right. Well, it's not.
It's a human issue.
Exactly.
Truly.
It's for humanity. It's not. The problem with the politics is that it continues to keep us in a state of divide, when actually what the earth wants to do is reunite us as one. Because through the nourishment, through the remembrance of the oneness of the food from the earth, we can wake the fuck up.
Well, we're also giving these examples of like, oh, we can't change our whole food system to regenerative. We can't do that. I mean, there are plenty of examples of farmers, including Bob Quinn, who literally did the test of conventional versus organic and yielded the same output in 1 year.
Exactly. And
without any input.
And exactly.
And the reality is that we're so far removed from taking care of Mother Nature. And at some point, I mean, it already is happening, but like, we can't keep going this way. We can't keep going this way. And so if we don't start making that investment back into the land and back into keeping people, safe and healthy, like we are at a point where it's like, this can't be a Republican versus Democrat issue. We have to find common ground, and we have to move the needle to build this systemic change. And so when I'm on the Hill, you know, I try to think about my beautiful 5-year-old son and the world that I want to live like him to live in. And it just can't be this current one. And we have to do better. And so we have to be stopping. We cannot continue to be so individualistic. We have to really be in community, and we have to start coalescing together. And I want my industry to have a voice in this, because we are feeding a large percentage of the population every single day. And so we need to be on the front line of these conversations, and we need to directly be involved in the eradication of our chronic disease epidemic. And it cannot be a Republican or a Democratic talking point. It's the daily life of every single individual, and it shouldn't be so hard for any family to take care of themselves. And the affordability aspect of it, like, can't just be a talking point anymore.
Okay, so this is a perfect thing to cue me up, because what we haven't talked about is I'm a philanthropist that has retired. I gave all of my funds to, not all, quite all, but I'm right there at the very end of giving all of my funds to films about this movement, gardens for every school, gardens for every mental health system, in our community. Like, one by one, I am doing my best. I'm giving any and everything I have in my power to give to this movement in my community so that it can expand.
Is so beautiful.
And then I'm collecting voices all over the world to understand how philanthropists that I'm connected to can support you and can support your voice in this movement, because it should not just be a conversation. There needs to be action. And when it was within the last few months, it was September, that I had my moment of like, I can't wait any longer. I can't wait for someone. I can't just tell other people to do this and to give all their funds if I haven't fully given mine. So I did. And
that deserves like just a moment in itself, because truly it is the private sector that, unfortunately, in today's world does have to get involved in order for us to get out of this. But on top of that, the investment in visuals is so incredibly important. Just like I was saying about the landfill, what you don't see, you don't know.
Exactly.
And if people can't really visualize what it truly looks like, where their food comes from, and where these storytelling elements can emotionally pull at them to make them think differently, like, without these visuals, it's going to be hard to get the masses to demand better and more. And so that investment in these stories and this advocacy work and all of this is so crucial, because what we're seeing right now, if we can give credit to this movement of Make America Healthy, is that more people are asking questions and they're hearing words that they had never maybe heard before. And so they are taking a moment to think through, oh, maybe I'll turn the label of this over. Oh, wow, like that.
Can't read that.
That's not great, There is a little bit more that's being demanded by the consumer. And when there's more demanded by the consumer, as I said earlier, you shift the demand, you shift the supply chain.
Exactly.
And so when you create these visuals and you do this hard work of building these stories so more and more people can see it, you are awakening their consciousness to be able to want to be part of the change. Because especially when people go through the health journeys, right? You're so bought in because you feel so much better. Like, I feel better at 37 than I did at 27.
Same, 10 years ago, no question.
You're so bought in. And then when you realize, why did I feel so bad before? And then you learn how much is stacked up against you. Then you get angry and then you get loud.
Yeah.
And that is what I'm hoping to see more and more people have happen, because the more we're angry and loud together, coming from a place of love, right?
Absolutely.
But like, the more we're doing it together, the stronger we are, and we are just better together in really transforming our food system and keeping people having a beautiful, long-lived life, which, by the way, for the politicians to understand, the ROI on our healthcare system, the ROI of the yield that can come out of our farms when making these investments can truly actually pay off in itself.
Of course.
You just have to be willing to do the hard work up front.
It's
to
the
get
investment.
The better result.
It's literally the investment in health. So back to being rooted in love, because I completely agree with you. We have to get loud. We have to get angry. We have to feel our voices come through. But if it's not coming from the root of love, it won't land in the way that we need it to for our future generations at all. So these incredible panels and the sign out front around what Amma is in terms of your family being rooted in love. Can you just share a little bit about why Amma? Why this? It's so beautiful.
I'll be transparent.
Always.
My dad was a chef and I grew up in the industry, but he passed away from pancreas cancer and then my mom took over. And I've told that story before, but what people don't really realize is that I grew up in a household that was very largely predominantly based on fear. My whole childhood was filled with fear, with criticism. I was put in positions as a parentified child that I should probably have never been put in, but life was hard for what my mother was thrown into. But coming from my whole childhood being fear-based, and so I had to really fight for my own place in the world and my own voice. Doing the healing work that I've done over the last, I don't know how long, but it's been a long time. There's been a lot of conversations about like spirituality and religion and like what love really means and like what, you know, your place on the life is. And if you think about it, I grew up Italian, I grew up very Catholic, right? And so there's a lot of conversations about the fear and the guilt that comes also in Catholicism, which also probably added to the mix for me. And when I was younger, I came across this poem from St. Augustine, which is Ama e faccio che vuoi. And I have it on a beautiful orange door when you walk into Amma. And it means that if you do things from the root of love, only that will transpire. And that was one of those wake up moments of like just looking and reframing, you know, the conversation of religion and spirituality for me. And it always stuck with me. And then in my journey of healing, you know, I really started to understand the principles of the Course of Miracles. And, you know, Marianne Williamson's book was like my first, you know, entryway into that, Return to Love. And you start to actually realize that the opposite of love is not hate, it's fear. And when you start to surrender more to the process and you start to do things from that place of love, I just feel like you're able to really be your most authentic self. You're be able to, even if people are feeling so fearful right now or filled with so much hate and anger, you can get through to people by just genuinely coming from this beautiful place of love. And so the way that we try to embody that in our restaurant is so important to me, because even if we mess up, and we definitely make mistakes as a restaurant, just knowing that people's intentions were rooted in love is enough for me to be able to be like, okay, tomorrow's a new day, let's start over. And you know, these curtains, everything here are pieces that are from my dad's little hotel that he had in Italy. And just to have these like little symbols and remembrances of, you know, my heritage and everything that my dad had built. And then to now be on this journey when he was a chef and, you know, just to carry on his legacy, but just in such a different way, in my own voice and not just his legacy.
Totally.
It's just like a reminder of like, he was he, and I very much appreciate all he built, but I am me and I am enough in what I want to build. And I truly want to carry on to build this mission.
She is she, and you feed people with love.
Thank you.
And it lasts through the body and truly does transport. Since I met you, it's been such a gift to feel fully nourished.
Thank you.
And I just adore you.
I appreciate it. I adore you too. Thank you.
Ciao.
Grazie, Bella. Mamma. I talk to the crows on the wire, they carry a voice I still know. My hands in the dirt, pulling fire from seeds that the dead helped me sow. The gardens remember what I can't forget, a woman who lived here I've already met.